Mercy is a virtue that we don't hear a lot about these days. It seems to have fallen out of fashion, maybe because of how illogical it is, how much it demands. True mercy is forgiveness that is unearned and undeserved. It's not bestowed on someone because their pleading was especially effective or because their predicament is unjust. True mercy is unearned and undeserved. Of course, part of that equation is a power difference, as Keith was talking about in his opening. There's something that one party wants that another party has the power to provide. That could be forgiveness of a debt, removal of a physical danger, release from captivity, or any number of acts of compassion. But someone has what another person needs in this business of mercy. That brings me to the third key component. Mercy is an action, not a feeling. You might think of it as compassion plus action. Mercy isn't a thought, an idea, or an emotion. Mercy is an action that benefits someone else who doesn't necessarily deserve it. When you think about it, mercy is a risky proposition. There's no guarantee that the recipient will return the favor. They may not have the ability to return it, or they may just choose not to. If we're merciful, if we give away the power or the resources that we have, who will protect us? There's a leap of faith involved here. Mercy only makes sense if we believe that either we're working with something bigger than ourselves, or if we believe in the long game, in the equation of goodness in our world, our little acts of grace make a difference. As we focus on mercy this month in worship, it's a good opportunity to clarify one of the big misconceptions of our theological history, especially about universalism. Historically, universalism is our belief that God would not punish anyone eternally for the sins they committed. It took root in America as a tidal wave of fire and brimstone theology swept across the country. In brave opposition to that belief in an angry and vengeful God, our predecessors argue that God was really more about love and reconciliation, and no loving God would condemn anyone to eternal punishment. There are a couple of different ways that we have misunderstood universalism today. One is based on a sort of moral relativism. It says that, yeah, you sin and I sin and everybody sins, and well, I guess it all works out in the long run. Who's to judge who if no one is perfect? Well, our Universalist Christian forebears were pretty clear about that. That while it's not our business to judge each other, that God was judging all of this, and that our actions mattered, most importantly. Our actions matter a lot. Just because salvation is universal, or as we might say today, that we're all in this together and love wins, just because our fate is all tied up together doesn't mean that what we do is individually any less important. Our morality matters. The other big misunderstanding of universalism today is that we're too good to be judged or punished. Our Unitarian heritage embraced that sense of inherent worth and dignity, but our Universalist forebears had a pretty different idea. Universalists recognize the frailty of our human character and recognize that we all are in need of some pretty serious forgiveness. And they came to believe through personal experience with the sacred and through interpretation of the scripture that our all too human shortcomings would be forgiven. And that is good news. The best story that sort of explains that understanding of it is George de Beneville. As a young child in the 1700s, George de Beneville was tormented by these actual visions of himself as a child burning in hell until he one day had a personal conversion experience of Christianity. And he looked around from that point and said, well, if I, as the lowly, horrible sinner that I am, remind you, he's still a very young person, but if I, as this lowly, horrible person, am saved, then surely everyone else must be. I think it's an important story to remind us that our sense of forgiveness isn't about humans being great necessarily. It's about forgiveness and love and compassion being the name of the game. Mercy is the linchpin of universalism, then and now. Today, in our universalism, we believe that our fate is all tied up together, that no one gets left behind. Therefore, what you do matters. It matters a whole lot. We know that we have the great fortune to live in this amazing world at this moment in history when so much is possible. And this opportunity was a mercy that we didn't earn. The best we can do is be grateful and try to be merciful to our neighbors. So I've talked quite a bit about mercy as a theological principle, but it's not just ours to receive. Mercy is ours to give away as well. And the opportunities are more frequent than you might think. Lately, I've been drawn to the little book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. You've probably heard of it. It was published in 1997, I think. It was hugely popular. I was really slow to find it, or maybe I just wasn't ready for it yet. The book is based on indigenous wisdom from the Toltec people that predated Aztecs in Mexico. And as the title suggests, there are four agreements. They are: one, be impeccable with your word. Two, don't take anything personally. Three, don't make assumptions. And four, always try your best. It turns out the first and the second of these agreements relate very closely to mercy. The first, be impeccable with your word, reminds us to be careful about what we say. Not just to be honest, but to realize that our words have great power. When we're tired or frustrated, or when we're speaking about people who aren't in the room, a negative word can have serious consequences. The simple example given in the book is about a parent who's tired and having a terrible headache. And the daughter of this parent is having a glorious day. In fact, it's such a good day that she wants to sing loudly. And the parent, at their wits' end, says to the child, "Stop singing, you have a terrible voice." This is a little bit of an extreme example, I know, but the story says that after that moment, the young person believed that, and most of her life was convinced that she had a terrible voice. And a child who loved singing became someone who was frightened of it. It's so easy to forget that the words that come out of our mouths shape the world around us. And the ideas in our head shape the way we perceive the world. Recognizing that power over others and power to shape our own experience. Mercy begins with the smallest acts. Mercy begins with letting go of the inner critic and with being thoughtful about what we express to others, especially those that are impressionable. The second agreement, related to the first, is not to take anything personally. Just as we might be inclined when we are tired or not feeling great to speak negatively, other people's thoughts and actions are shaped mostly by their inner world, not us. What others say and do is rarely actually about you. Even words and actions that are directed toward you aren't necessarily about you. The words and actions directed at you are not necessarily about you. When it's time to forgive, time to move beyond how we have been slighted, even when we're looking deeply at how someone may have really hurt us, it's a good idea to remember not to take it personally. None of this stuff is easy. Being impeccable with our word and not taking things personally, it's not easy, but it's powerful stuff. Mercy is not that huge of a thing. Each one of us has opportunities every day to bestow mercy or to withhold it. Though we often forget, we have a lot of things that could make a difference for someone else in need. We all have spare money, from a few cents to a few $100s, that we could part with pretty easily. Most of us have a physical ability that could help someone else that's less able. And we have the right to vote, a right that a lot of our neighbors in Orange County don't have. Though we forget about it, we have the things that others want, and we have the power to bestow mercy. Recognizing the power, especially when that power differential is vast, can feel really uncomfortable. So I ask, what arises in you when you encounter a person asking for money? For me, one voice inside my head says, well, this is an unsustainable way to help. They may use it for drugs or alcohol. A very different voice that's exactly as loud as the first voice says a few dollars isn't going to make a difference to you. And if you can't be kind as a Unitarian minister, then this is a pretty messed up world. And a third voice cements the indecision. It's the voice that recognizes how fortunate I have been and how unfortunate some people are. It's a strange mixture of guilt, confusion, and hopelessness. That voice just screams, stop! I'm trying to make sense of what's going on here. Stop! Don't do anything! Mercy is tricky business. It's difficult because having mercy involves the terrifying recognition that we have the power to make a difference in the world. We have the power to make someone else's life better if we choose to. And those little actions add up. I sometimes hear in conversations the idea that some towns or states are liberal and other towns or states are conservative. Some are Democrat and others are Republican. This always rubs me the wrong way. I think it's because I was very much a vocal political minority for much of my life. But I know that no town is populated by people of a single point of view. No faith community is populated by a single point of view or even a small family. The majority vote doesn't annihilate the other 49%. In our very purple-orange county, we know that every voice, every vote counts. I like to think of acts of mercy as votes cast in the moral universe. Our action or inaction is like a vote. One by one, actions build the world that we live in, and the world our neighbors live in, and the world our children and our grandchildren live in. And in our seemingly more divisive world, every act of mercy counts. The more countercultural mercy is, the more it's needed. Once a key virtue, mercy is now looked down upon with disdain. Except for a very few moderate voices, popular and political culture for the past few years has been just steeped in outrage and accusation. Every time a political shift occurs or a perceived shortage of resources comes up, some of our neighbors stock their shelves with guns and ammunition. And from the left, call out culture tells us to publicly shame anyone who might have made a racist, sexist, or homophobic remark. Doesn't tell us to get curious or to reach out or to ask questions. It tells us to shame first and ask questions later. And I have to confess, I feel myself sucked into that vortex of distrust, blame, and retribution. None of us is immune to it. I freely admit that many of you have been more level headed than me. But universalism is our theological heritage. Mercy is our brand. This should be our moment to do our thing. So I end this sermon with a short confession. In this time, this wild, vengeful, confusing time, I need a faith tradition and a community that pulls me toward more mercy and compassion. I need a counterbalance to the drive to retribution. Our mission, some have said, is to love the hell out of the world, not to judge and punish. Our tradition and our mission is to love the hell out of the world. So may it be. Amen.